All right. Hey, guys. Thanks for hanging in. I know I'm the last one before the break, and we're going just a little over. I'll try to keep it interesting, and nothing's more interesting than operating margins at streaming media networks. So you're in for a treat. So as Holly said, I'm Rebecca Avery. I am the owner and principal at Integration Therapy. I help streaming networks with their operating margins. My background is in content operations. I hate to brag, but I've worked at over a half dozen failed streaming startups, going back almost 20 years. Went to a couple that did sort of okay. Went to another one. It was the biggest startup I'd ever joined, and I was completely lost. It was called Pluto TV. And I got to scale that content operation from one content partner that we onboarded my first day to 26 countries and 1.3 million assets. So I've seen it all. After that, I went to a couple of giant enterprises, and I started integration therapy because I want to go back to the small and medium guys and help level the playing field. So really, really happy to be talking to my people again. So I am going to actually start this conversation by inundating you with a little bit of bad news. So I do want to talk mainly about operating margins. It's mainly what I help with. It is all of the things we've traced the call that's coming from inside the house. Something is wrong. We are working really hard to optimize our revenue, and too much of it is leaking out before we get to the profit line. According to Deloitte Insights, this year, the average streaming network is losing 25 to 30% of potential profit from things such as escalating content costs, viewer churn, low subscription prices, right? We've raced to the bottom a little bit on the subs, which is why we're moving to AVOD and diversifying our revenue. And importantly, inefficient internal operations. By comparison, this was something I came across. In the heyday of paid TV, operating margins were plus 25 to 35%. So we have sort of flipped it over. The last few years, we've had to learn to be a lot more disciplined when it comes to how we operate our companies, lean operations, automation where possible, immediately and aggressively exploring AI and how that's going to fit in and cut costs. But even with that, most streamers are still barely breaking even, or they're still operating on a negative profit. Largely, according to Mercury and Morningstar, because of the complexity. A streaming network is a very complex company. So, same thing from the Global Media Outlook from Deloitte and PwC, fragmented workflows, redundant processes, unaligned data systems, rights, ad operations can erode 25% of the revenue before it reaches the profit line. Now, these numbers aren't really like apples to apples, but they do show a trend that we are still, as an industry, not operating as efficiently as we could be. The pain gets felt everywhere. My sweet spot, my history is in content metadata, and people say, who cares about the metadata? And I say only the people that work with it, which includes finance, legal, partnerships, anything to do with compliance, rights management, plus the handing over of files, discoverability, recommendations, the whole network. And metadata, which I will get to in more detail in a minute, is often at the center of this. So there's something else I want to show you guys, which is sort of the crux of why I named this talk the way I named it. At the highest level, what you earn minus what you spend, and of course there's another line in there for taxes, is what you keep. But we need to learn how to measure leakage. Leakage is a shared responsibility, but it is also something that can be very difficult to trace. And it's something I think we're really just starting to figure out since we've had to start running more lean. Because years ago, streaming media companies, we cared about viewership. How many eyeballs can we get? We cared about growth, and then it was top-line revenue, and now we're looking at profit sustainability and becoming a more mature industry. So I want to talk to you guys about this graph. And I'm sort of interrupting, I just saw Laura make a face. I'm sort of interrupting my own presentation for this. So as many of you guys know, if you came by my table, I'm in the middle of my go-to-market. I've been building this company for a little over a year. And the companies that I'm talking to, the medium-sized streamers, when they talk about their operating margins, they're saying, well, that's something that we're just going to have to, we don't really know how to get over that, and the big guys already have this figured out, and this is just such a huge problem for us, and it's something that's unique to the small and medium guys, and it's not. And one of them sent me this, and I bent myself into a pretzel trying to figure this thing out, because it comes from, as you can see, IBIS World and S&P Global. So you know that it's not just BS. And I think what I have figured out is the blue is about right, and in the last 5 years, we have nearly doubled top-line revenue in streaming. It has absolutely exploded. The red line is the operating margin as a percentage. So one thing to notice is that the red line is times 3. To even get it up close enough to the blue to be on the same chart, it had to go times 3. So in 2020, this is the top North American streamers. This isn't all of them. So this is about the top 7 or 8 that make up most of the market share. That was running at about 14%. It does go up all the way to about 28% on this current operating margin, top streaming media companies in North America. That makes sense if you're counting Netflix, but even Netflix is still, I think, below 30. And it also makes sense if you're counting YouTube as part of Alphabet, which is running at a giant margin. I do not believe Alphabet is releasing the operating margins for YouTube. I've seen estimates that it might be around 20%. I've seen estimates that most of the other bigger guys on their operating margins, if they're running in the positive, are maybe 10, 12, 15%. So don't worry, this is a problem for everybody. Even the people that are working with McKinsey and Deloitte in the house are having a tough time figuring out their operating margins. Just a lot of very defeated people for no reason. Wanted to share that. As I mentioned, profit containment is a shared responsibility. The C-suite at the top are the ones who actually kind of look to make sure that all of the units are being responsible. But there are a lot of things like metadata, like team development, like operational efficiency that falls between all of these. So, what does that mean? What that means is, if you're looking above the surface, there's the metrics that everybody tracks, right? So what's your top line revenue? What's your ad fill? How many subscribers do you have? What's your content spend? Hopefully you're tracking what is your content processing spend and getting the true cost and true value of your content. But there are other things that are a lot more difficult to catch. So I don't know if anybody here works at a streaming network and has ever had an issue with a partner payout at the end of the quarter, but it is a fire drill at every company I have ever worked with. So that happens because somebody changed data over here. They thought that it was a metadata issue. Engineering tried to fix it. They couldn't figure it out. They finally found the guy over here who totally thought that idea was for something else, and then it didn't make it over to finance the right way. Those are the things that are very difficult to track. I think the bigger companies, after having worked at a couple of them, have a little easier time chasing that down because they have people like a senior vice president of program management or product operations that are working cross-vertically and can help chase this down. They still don't chase them all down. And the bigger the company, the more complex the operations, which tells me, after having worked at companies of all different sizes, that any streaming company can operate on a 10 to 15% margin at least. It is pretty impressive the things that you can change very quickly for very little money. So I developed this framework, which I actually first pitched at an OTT.X breakfast about 6 months ago, and people called me afterwards and said they really liked it. So I'm still going with it. And when I came up with this, it was just one of those like, oh, this is what I've been trying to tell every COO I've been working for the last 20 years. So these are in an order for a particular reason. The first is strategic alignment. you can lose more than a quarter of your revenue before it hits the profit line because you do not have strategic communications top down and because you do not have strategic alignment cross silo. If you do not have a strategy for that, that is a published way of doing it, and you don't have people operating in a uniform way on how things need to be communicated, you're suffering here. You have people that are doing work that doesn't contribute to your KPIs, 100%. Operational efficiency is another one. Metadata integrity, there again, can affect everything. Team training and development and technology integration. So technology integration is last because it should be there to support the things that you've already planned. Technology integration includes things like your AI, but your AI isn't going to work that well. It's going to be one of the 80% of IT projects that fail if you don't clean up your metadata, your operational efficiency, and your strategic alignment first. So if you're looking to cut costs, this is where you start. So there's a middle path approach to profit containment that I've been working with companies on, which is you don't need to call people to come in and do a gigantic transformation. You also don't need to do whack-a-mole. If you use those 5 pillars and you start at the beginning and you look throughout the company, you will find the things to fix. And then just fix your biggest problems. Think about how the interdependencies between those 5 pillars are going to affect each other as you make those changes. Sometimes you can make one change and it fixes 10 things, or sometimes it breaks 10 more. But if you follow the 5 steps, it will work. So these are the places where I learned how to do it. This is my brag point. Pluto TV, we were able to increase content ingestion by 3 times and cut 50% vendor costs in my first 90 days. Televisa Univision, we canceled $4 million in vendor contracts in 60 days. That was mostly to launch content on an Amazon channel, which we realized we could do ourselves once we actually looked at the alignment. And Allen Media, about 40% of the ad revenue was slipping until we used our existing technology to monitor the fast channels and fix the SCUDdy markers. None of those required technology. So, a place to start, I built this thing called Ops Pilot. I used about 300 different data points. I normalized all of the data. I created this engine. It's totally free, totally private. You can get a general report without even giving me your email. If you're kind enough to give me your email, I will send you a much more detailed report on how your metadata is doing, how your technology integration is doing, et cetera, and you get a free hour with me to review it. So, takeaways, margin links follow patterns. If you go through that 5-step process once or twice, you won't have to go through it consciously anymore. Fix the biggest leak first, but be conscious of what it's going to affect, and always start with strategic alignment, even if it's a metadata problem. Who's using this metadata? Why? How does this piece of metadata move the company forward? If somebody can't answer that, you've got metadata problems. And now we're going to do the raffle draw with my dog Ruby up there so that people understand, whoever the winner is, why there's just a little bit of dog hair on the backpack. And Jose is going to draw. Who's the winner? Is Kenneth Campo here? Kenneth Campo? Is he outside? Is he here though? Okay, I don't want to mail it to him. All right, thanks guys for your time.